Season 4 is going to be the biggest update we have ever made to Diablo 4 since it has launched.
Our focus on Season 4 is to really make a lot of evergreen updates to the core systems of Diablo 4.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity across the seasonal and eternal realms through a collection of new activities aimed at ensuring the moment-to-moment gameplay experience is as exciting and rewarding when Hal comes to Sanctuary.
Season 4 item changes are some of the biggest changes we've made to Diablo 4 thus far.
We've never done anything like this. We are fundamentally changing how you engage with items, how you upgrade them, and along the way solving a lot of things that we've seen continually from our community that we agree with are pain points of our existing item system right now.
So in this new itemization system, we're focusing on narrowing down the scope of the base affixes. They're going to be a lot simpler, they're going to be fewer in number, so you can much more easily parse whether this item is useful for you, and if it is, then you can take it and further upgrade it and customize it to your own specific build. Tempering is a new system that allows you to really customize the gear that you find. In order to temper, you will need to go to the blacksmith and then choose the recipe that you wish to temper from, and then a random affix from that recipe will be attached onto your gear. Tempering recipes can be found from almost all of the content throughout Sanctuaries.
So you will actually be looking for tempering recipes that go directly with what you're envisioning. Maybe you're thinking, I'm gonna play a Frost Sorceress. There are also going to be recipes that are more generic and maybe are just generally good for the Sorceress, but you'll be able to choose which one you think is gonna be most powerful with the build you're making for your class. We're making a pretty radical change to the Codex of Power in this season, based again on the feedback that has been coming from our players.
Now, every single legendary in the game will be entered into your Codex of Power so that you can continually imprint the best possible version of that legendary onto your gear.
So going forward, there will no longer be carrying around all of these aspect crystals in your inventory. It's all going to be in the Codex of Power. So part of the final system that we have is going to be greater affixes. What's a greater affix? Well, we want to keep it compelling that there are some drops that are even better than the others when you're trying to get the perfect build at endgame. Because of this, in World Tier 4, and only in World Tier 4, when an ancestral legendary item drops, there's a chance the affixes on it can roll as greater affixes. These will roll with bigger values that are normally available for that affix.
Greater affixes are fairly rare, but they're not impossible to find. While leveling up, you're going to be able to find upgrades much more easily with this new system.
Another part of itemization is going to be masterworking. Now, this is something really intended for that very high end game, again, World Tier 4. This is where a player is going to take an item, already has the affixes that they want on it, but now they go through a process of upgrading those affixes, getting even higher values on them.
Masterworking really starts at level 100. Once you've already completed your build and found some of the best items, you're going to be able to test your build against the powerful enemies of the pit.
The pit is a new endgame system that has been added in this season that is going to challenge players that feel that they have largely maximized their build.
By pushing into more difficult tiers of the pit, you're going to be able to unlock rarer crafting materials to masterwork your gear even further.
You're gonna have to play some of the hardest content in the game, but once you do, if you're successful, you can go and make those affixes even stronger.
In Season 4, we're ramping the intensity of the Helltides through the inclusion of a variety of new activities, the first of which is a doubling down and rise of the cultists' presence throughout the tide. You're going to be running through the Helltide, seeing the cultists just conjuring up swarms and swarms of demons, adding to that sense of manic and chaos that they're pretty well known for. The other archetype that we're adding is the presence of the Doomsayers, who were unfortunate enough to be caught out in the tide and basically just lost their minds to all of the mania going on around them. And lastly, rounding out the new activities are just the inclusion of the Iron Wolves. They're finally joining the fight. They could no longer stand in the sidelines, seeing the Helltides and Hell's forces intensify their assault on Sanctuary. As Season 4 players engage and progress through the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity, they'll earn honor with the Iron Wolves, unlocking access to a vast assortment of rewards to accompany and empower your Season 4 journeys. In the updated Helltide, for players who are able to stay alive long enough, they'll be paid a visit by the Hellborn, former heroes of Sanctuary who have aligned with the forces of Hell to attack the allies they once aligned with. Players who are able to take down the Hellborn will be acquiring the materials they need to engage with the new premier Helltide activity, the Accursed Rituals. Located in the Helltide, these Accursed Rituals are pretty much just botched rituals from the cultists that players will be kickstarting for themselves, drawing the attention of all the nearby Helltide monsters in this kind of all-out battle. One of my favorite themes for these ambushes is the Hellworm. It's literally a giant hell slug beast that emerges from the ground and it spews out a whole bunch of mobs at you. If you're able to survive that, you'll be paid a visit from the Blood Maiden, our brand new Helltide mini-boss and one of the ultimate challenges in the new experience.
So I think I'm actually most excited about this season because of what you're able to do with your old characters, how they can integrate with this new item game and take them to new levels of power with this system.
I think that the best part of this update is that you're going to be really empowered to build the character that you want to play. You're going to be able to pick custom affixes and enhance your character in a lot of new and interesting ways.
All right. We were just watching a video.
Literally
and everyone
just finger gunning the screen for no reason.
And everyone's like, what are you doing, Adam?
Yeah, okay.
Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to another Diablo IV developer update live stream. My name is Adam Fletcher. I am the community director here for Diablo. I'm joined by this wonderful panel, plus an additional head, which we will call out. But
we only have 4 seats, so we have to swap people around as we go.
We have to do the same thing we did during the PTR stream, which was like we swapped out like Joe Shelley, and I put in Adam Jackson.
That's true, we did do that.
And so we're gonna play more magic tricks today. But do you guys want to do a quick intro to yourself to the wonderful Diablo community?
Sure, I'm Joe Pipora. I'm the associate game director for Diablo IV.
And I'm Adam Jackson, the lead live class designer for Diablo IV.
And we have a new face.
Hello. I'm Colin Feiner. I'm the lead live game designer.
Awesome. And then we're actually going to be joined by Derek.
Who are you?
Well, I already introduced myself.
Oh,
you
sorry.
just missed it because I'm
already screwing this up, everybody.
I know, terrible.
It's my first stream.
But we actually have Derek who will be joining us as well. Derek, you just saw in the video prior talking about Season 4. He'll be swapping in to talk a little bit more about Helltides later in this. But big stream here. We have Season 4 coming up. As you guys saw earlier this week, it is Loot Reborn for Season 4. And a lot of players actually got to experience it a couple weeks ago with PTR. This was our first Diablo 4 PTR. It was a massive undertaking from the team here, but it was really, really great to have players jump in early, check out Season 4 and all the changes, and actually provide feedback. And so we have a lot to cover today based off of feedback that we received from players from PTR itself. So, but Joe, I know you wanted to jump into kind of talking a little bit more about Season 4, how PTR went, before we jump into all the changes.
Yeah, happy to. So, okay, so last time we were on stream, we were actually talking about a lot of the changes that players are going to get a chance to check out on the PTR. So we think that went really, really well. It was even just having the week of time for players to like just jump in and just crush through all of the content, check out all of the new features, and it gets a lot of feedback, find a lot of bugs on the way as well. Was again super valuable. It's been really, really great for the team. We'll take a lot of this feedback, look at the tuning variety of features, and really make sure that we've got the best version of the Season 4 experience ready when we get into the launch state. So in terms of like our big takeaways, first of all, really, really valuable across the board. Season 4, Season Loot Reborn was, as I mentioned during the PTR stream originally, was really our opportunity to go back and take a lot of the feedback in that we've been looking at since the launch of the game from 2023.
This art is so good.
I do love the key art for this. This key art for Season 3 was awesome as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So so looking back at the thanks for disrupting my flow.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
David
Yeah, thanks so
Lazard
much.
is amazing.
So yeah, looking back at the launch of the product in 2023, we've been getting a lot of really good feedback. You remember back in Season 2, Season of Blood, we made a big change to vulnerable damage and the multiplicative damage that comes along with it. We made a change to the way the elemental resist worked.
Yep.
And there were a lot of things we had to do to make those changes really shine through. There's a lot of Paragon nodes that had to get updated. There were a lot of legendary aspects that had to get changed. There was just a lot of itemization stuff in the background that we had to do to make those systems work better and lift up other things around them, like overpower, for example, to make that feel like it was in a better spot. So now that we're looking at even when we were done that one big release for Season of Blood, we knew that there was a lot more that we wanted to do. Again, that we've been thinking about. But there's a lot of work we need to do, make sure that all of these things really all fit together cohesively. So, as people got a chance to see on the PTR, the introduction of things like the tempering feature, which we're going to talk a little bit more in a minute, where you get to introduce these new affixes into items, and affixes you can't get on items anymore. The reduction affix count on items overall, so it's a lot easier to go and sort through 25 pairs of gloves in your inventory at any given time, where you don't really have those same situations. We reduced the number of items that drop in the game experience overall, but made sure that the items that are dropping are just more valuable and more likely to be upgrades for you, or something you could kind of build into an upgrade. We introduced the masterworking feature, right? And Colin helped head a lot of these things up, right, working with the teams. So they introduced the masterworking feature where players can continually upgrade items to increase the value of the affixes, and then at ranks 4 and 8 and 12, you get to kind of crit on one of these and make them even better. There's a lot of things that were introduced. We added the new content type in the form of the Pit of the Artificer. It's this new extremely deep and deadly dungeon dive players get to go into once they get into the towards the end game, when you're getting to 85, 90 for your character level. You're starting to kind of dip into that space, and that's where you go to get your masterworking materials, which feels really, really good. And we learned a lot of really great lessons from Greater Rifts in Diablo 3, because we think there was some really cool content there. So there's some really, really fun things there. And then
also the Codex of Power updates. You no longer have to save all your legendaries all the time.
Codex of Power updates, which I was to be fair, I've been so excited about the Codex of Power updates. I've been teasing it for 6 live streams. I feel it's just not before BlizzCon. I feel like I teased it at the end of a live stream. So it is what it is. But again, super excited about the Codex of Power changes. That is very transformational. Now, when Legendary drops on the ground for you, you just salvage it, you get that aspect, put it into your Codex, add the roll that you got, and you just get to use it in perpetuity. And we actually have some fun ways, we'll talk about later, how we're playing with that a little bit as we go. So, all of this stuff and more, we made huge changes to Helltide. I know Derek, we talked about it in a little while, as he helped lead the team that did a lot of the work for that. And we got to introduce the season theme in the form of Loot Reborn, and then the reintroduction of the Iron Wolves mercenaries the players be working with during the course of the release. I know that we showed a little bit of that off earlier. And I'm just really, really excited about the release overall, as this was an opportunity for us to work with not just the season team, but also the live team, and a lot of support from the systems groups. And there's a lot of things being done for the expansion that's coming out eventually as well, like Vessel of Hatred. So being able to really organize teams and make sure that we're in a really, really good spot to provide this really big update for the game has been very, very exciting. And the feedback, going back to the feedback from PTR was, again, really, really valuable. It was great to get players in there and to get those things taken care of. And we're going to talk about some of those things today. I know that some of this information has been we talked to a few press outlets, we talked to a few different people, and some information is getting out there. But I want to make sure we can provide a little bit more detail, because I know this is the audience that wants to know the real specifics. We're going to get into it, right? Yeah. And we'll also have our Q&A as we usually do at the end, where we can get answer some more questions the community might have as we kind of go through the whole thing. So yeah, that was at a high level, that's what we're feeling about the PTR, feeling pretty good about it. I'm happy to maybe jump into itemization, or how do we want to go?
Yeah, I think the first thing we probably want to talk about is the itemization changes that are in Season 4 that people experience, which includes the tempering, the masterworking stuff that changed in Season 4. And of course, all the feedback that we got from both tempering, masterworking, and what we are planning on doing based off of that PTR feedback for the launch of Season 4.
Yeah, we have quite a few updates.
Yeah,
so.
Lots.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just starting off then with high-level itemization. Let's go back to some of the goals that we had when we started down on this. Started some of the work for Season 4. Now we want to make sure that first players were having an easier time comparing items in their inventory. It's actually one of the first things we started thinking about when we began discussing what we thought needed to change about itemization, because the experience in Season 3 and Season 2 and other seasons has really been like the player. You'll get into like the you're running your high tier nightmare dungeons. You're getting lots of drops. You're sorting through all of this stuff. Like you'll have like items that are like this is like a 904 eye power sword, and this is a 909 eye power sword. Now I've got like 6 helmets that all are have a wide variety of affixes on them. We really wanted to, again, just to quickly hit this, we wanted to make sure that we had a lower number of affixes overall that could roll on different item slots, but those affixes were more like generically useful and stuff that you could really build around, as opposed to having lots of really conditional affixes going back to like the damage on Tuesdays joke, like that's like,
the shirt that
we wore,
Mr.
literally wearing it now. Huge proponent. It's always funny. So it's obviously because it's a joke, right? Oh, jokes are always funny. But the truth is, like, we want to make sure that where we want to have conditional affixes in the game, we want to find places players would be able to opt into them in a very specific way. So initially, want items that you're really dropping for you to have more generic utility, just more valuable for you overall, and also as a result of this, make it easier to compare those items. Yeah. So one of the changes that we made is we actually reduced the number of affixes that can naturally roll on item slots. So like now, a rare item can roll like 2 affixes, a legendary item can roll 3 affixes, but then later on, there's other systems you get to introduce. We'll talk about in a bit. It lets you introduce more of those. Yeah. And we did that, so it's just easier to go through things.
We also made all items post level 100 925. So you're no longer comparing like the designer number that's like 904 to 925. You're just focusing on what's cool about the item, which is the affixes.
Yeah, which is super important because there's a lot of situations where like if you're level 100, like Blood Harvest might be a lot of fun, but Blood Harvest is still dropping like eye power 900 items for you. And at that point, why would you want to keep even Blood Harvest, which players really love? Like, why would you want to keep engaging with it if you can't get really good endgame items format? Yeah. So now when you're like at level 100 and you're playing in Helltide, or if you're going through Nightmare Dungeons at like a regular, like a slightly lower tier and you're fighting level 100 monsters or higher, you're always getting eye power 925 items. They might not have all exactly the stats or exactly the rolls that you want, but you're always getting stuff you could actually potentially use.
Yeah, a lot of the things feel a lot better too, like gambling, right? Like now gambling is actually a really great source for targeting item slot because all of those are 925 at level 100.
That's right. So like the obols that you've been sitting on, where you go and you just churn through a whole bunch of these at once, they didn't have as much generic value. Now they're a lot better because you really can just like say, I am looking for a helmet, I am looking for a ring, and you can just go roll 10 eye power 925 rings in a row, and you have stuff to play with then at that point. So yeah, those were some of the high level changes we wanted to make with items with regards to like making it easier to compare these things. Codex hits a lot of the inventory concerns that we'd have. We made changes to gems in previous seasons, so we didn't have as many of them clogging up your inventory as well. So we thought that was really, really good stuff. But then we knew that we wanted to make sure that that it wasn't just about we weren't going to add another tier of eye power to items. That wasn't the way to make itemization more interesting for players and rewards more interesting. One of the core things that we really want to focus around was the idea that items have a journey. The best items have a journey, right? So when you get a really good item, it's about what the potential of that item is. What you can do with this item to make it really superior, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's sort of to jump into tempering. One of the first features we had in terms of taking your item on a journey was this idea that we wanted hundreds of different affixes, and each one spoke differently to a build. We wanted you to be able to play sort of whatever class fantasy or build fantasy you had in mind and manifest that through customization of your items. So we actually have some video, I think, of what the tempering feature looks like, and I can talk through some of the updates we've made from the PTR. So here you have, we're adding an offensive affix to the item. It's going to land on increased corpse explosion damage. It's like, yeah, that's pretty cool, especially if you really like corpse explosion. We've added a skip button so you can skip through the flow if you really want to blast through this. We also have a result screen now that shows you exactly what affix it landed on and what the roll range was. And then we have some more exciting affixes that you're going to see here. For example, chance to cast Bone Spear projectiles twice, which I know, Adam, is your favorite. Cause
oh, yes. I love more projectiles.
The balance bomb
Don't
dropped
say
in
it
your
like
lap.
that. Everyone loves
so
projectiles.
Great.
It is cool, though,
it is pretty cool.
Being able to
Derek is here. So yeah, we did our swap. But Joe's still going to be here off screen. We just want to make sure that Derek appears here. Derek is our lead seasons designer. So he'll be talking a little bit more about Helltides later. Sorry to interject. Okay. Go ahead, Joe.
Now I'm off screen. So yeah, I think one of the really cool things about the tempering system in general is that like the manuals that we're introducing initially are just like the beginning of what we can do with tempering. It's opportunities to make like really weird and interesting new affixes to kind of throw at the player that we can introduce in seasons or in other updates. So it's something we can really extend and do some really neat stuff with.
Yeah, we absolutely plan to build on it in the future. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so a bunch of improvements to tempering overall.
And a lot of these, again, these improvements in tempering from the skip animations to the previews and stuff like that players will see were based off of feedback that we actually got from PTR. And so, again, huge shout out to the community for providing all that feedback for us so that we can actually get that in before the launch of Season 4. So, but with tempering, we also have Masterworking, which is another new feature within Season 4 and permanently within Diablo 4 itself. So, talk us through a little bit about what Masterworking is, and of course the changes as well that we're going to be seeing based off of PTR feedback.
Sure, yeah. So, the next step in your item's journey is to really take it to new heights. You've customized it, you found some base affixes you're really into, and we wanted to give you a way to essentially take some of these affixes to new levels. So you think about helms and CDR or cooldown reduction, or for example, that chance to replicate, your bone spear. We want you to be able to really juice those stats. So I think we have a video here of what that looks like. Overall, what we've really done is taken a look at the feedback. We got a bunch of feedback that it was tedious to upgrade these over and over. So we've removed the animation from ranks 1 through 3. We've kept the critical, upgrade. We have the animation still there, but you can skip it. Again, sort of in the spirit of blasting across everything that we do. So you can do that very quickly. Another piece of feedback that we got was that part of the masterworking process allows you to reset this. And why do you want to reset this? It's because you want to hit that specific affix you're looking for. You want to juice a specific affix. And sometimes you might miss, right? Which means you want to reset that item.
Yeah.
So part of the resetting sort of requires you to get lower tier materials. You're going to get these from the pit. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, we saw a bunch of feedback that it was really tedious to create like 1,000 caches and open up them in town like 100 times, right? It's super annoying. The town is lava. We want to address that. So, we've added multiple scales of material conversion to those caches. This is a short-term solution. We have something in the future planned. It's just not ready yet. While it's not the perfect solution, it does get you there a little bit quicker. There's multiple conversion rates of materials, so you can turn, one legendary material into a much higher count of materials based on the tiers that we have in that crafting system. So again, not the perfect solution. We have something coming in a future update.
Cool.
Awesome. So yeah, a lot of changes coming for Masterworking based off of feedback. Masterworking, of course, being a brand new, kind of that end tail of that item journey that you'll have even after tempering and stuff like that.
Yep.
So
I'll say another thing that was brought up as feedback was about veiled crystals, right? Didn't we reduce the amount that you need for crafting?
We did, and I can totally talk about some of the stuff we've done just overall on itemization. Veiled crystals is one of those things. So I'll talk about, first I want to touch on rare and magic items. That was something we made a change from Season 3 and Season 4. Legendary items are just generally straight up better than rare items now. And part of our goal there is really to ensure that players aren't sifting through sand, looking through thousands of items. We want to just call it out, like legendary items are legendary. At the same time, we acknowledge that there is some coolness to knowing that certain magic and rare items could have value to you, right? We don't have anything for Season 4 yet, but the design team is definitely talking about ways that we can bring this rarity back in a way that doesn't diminish our overall goal of trying to reduce that sort of sifting through sand feeling, right? So in the meantime, they can be salvaged. They still have a use in the end game. But we heard a ton of feedback, to your point, Adam, on the veiled crystals. It's just such a bottleneck, and it's like, God damn it, I have to pick a bunch of yellow items up to do any of the cool crafting features. What the hell, Blizzard?
That's an actual player quote, too.
I'm very sure it was.
So what we've done is we've made it so that legendaries break down into equal amounts of veiled crystals, so you can just not pick up yellow items. It's just a bonus now. We've also made sacred and ancestral items break down into 2 and 3 amounts of salvage. So sacred items will break down into double, ancestral will break down into triple. So we're effectively tripling the output of a lot of the salvage here.
And I know, that was probably the most vocal feedback that we got from players. About,
maybe a little bit.
Yeah, like,
Tuning,
I need more Veil Crystals. So I know that there's changes coming for that in Season 4 based off that PTR feedback. Another, probably maybe the second, maybe also the first topmost, our largest feedback piece that we got is around greater affixes and the visibility related to those. So there are changes going into that for Season 4. So Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, we wanted, the dopamine. That was a big goal also of part of itemization is just like seeing an item hit the ground and just being like, oh, I like that jackpot moment. Right?
So that's really important.
So we actually have some video here to show of what that actually looks like on the ground. So you can see, here's the weirdly long named item with the greater affix. Yeah, right.
Unyielding Commander's Sacrificial Sickle.
I know, right? So we have a 1 greater affix star. It'll go up to 3 or 4 if it's a unique item, which always feels incredible. So it shows up on the ground when it lands. And then if we can go to the next video, we actually have an indicator now when it is in the inventory.
Yeah, so you can see it.
Right.
I asked this as a joke, and it looks so good. I'm so happy.
I'm disappointed. I can't see like the pixels. It's not zoomed in. So that's been enormously helpful, and really, when you kill like Duriel or one of these tormented bosses, and they drop a ton of loot on the ground, to see some of these have stars on them, it just is a feel great moment.
Yeah, kind of goes with the whole like. Not sifting through the sands. You clearly see that icon. You know that it has value to you.
You want to know what's valuable.
Exactly. Especially, and again, even on the icon itself, like in your inventory, you'll immediately know those are my greater affix items. And long gone are the days of the Roman numeral. We
right. You didn't like the designer solution.
We will miss it. It's funny. Right. I think internally we knew like, oh, that's probably going to get changed. We had a few jokes about that. But I know
one thing I want to touch on real quick before I move on the itemization, if that's okay, is we actually, to touch on the veiled crystals, I think players are going to want to know this, is we reduced the imprinting cost of aspects quite a bit. So that's really going to help the veiled crystals as well. I think it went from like 75 veiled crystals to imprint on an ancestral armor to 16. So it's a pretty huge swing. Just getting way more of your aspects on gear. It's a lot more flexible.
We really want people to feel like, and this is kind of the Codex of Power updates in general, which I'm really pumped about, is we want you to feel like you're able to re-imprint those aspects and that it's something that you're not having a huge cost or huge barriers to doing, right? Because as you upgrade your gear, that should be part of your process, is like putting on their favorite affixes.
Yeah, so a lot of changes coming with tempering, masterworking, itemization, and I know, did we have any other changes that you wanted to cover before we move on to the next section? I know Colin's got this novel in front of him, and he's like, what am I going to do?
He was a keeper of a lot of our changes. Oh, one I think is worth mentioning, Colin, you may want to talk about, is the masterworking. I remember we got a lot of feedback about the fail chance.
Oh, that's a great
that's
point.
true. The fail chance we took. Funny enough, that was like probably the biggest thing changed.
Big one.
That was the first bullet, and I somehow missed it. So we definitely felt like there's a ton of feedback that the double random chance was just a little bit too much, and we agreed, so we just took it out. It's just fun now, just to upgrade the item. We adjusted the material costs a bit, but the fail chance is no longer there.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you, Colin, for going through those changes. We'll actually be back to Colin here later because he still has more to talk about from his novel papers that he has.
Joe, you want to swap
prepared. We did want to jump into some of the class balance changes that are coming after PTR. Of course, with Season 4, we have a lot of class balance changes that are on top of all these itemization changes. And we got a lot of great feedback from players. So, Mr. Adam Jackson.
Very much did. Yeah.
Let's run through these.
Yeah, so basically...
The classic Adam Jackson slides.
Yes, I love my slides. We have kind of 3 categories of things that I'm going to be talking about today. Again, thanks to everybody for playing on the PTR. We did get a ton of feedback. I'm not going to go over the specifics of everything that changed, but I'm going to go over kind of the categories of things just because there's a whole lot of changes. One of the first big ones was endgame survivability issues. So this is kind of talking about those people that went really far into the pit, and this is kind of something that's been happening on live as well that we wanted to address. And there's this phenomenon when you get really deep into the game and you're fighting high-level monsters where, you'll hit a point where the monsters are kind of easy and you're able to blow through with your really powerful builds, and then you kind of get to a point where they start one-shotting you. And it can be kind of mysterious and hard to understand, like, what's going on, why did this happen? We've also had some issues balancing that kind of top-end survivability when you get to those hard monsters in the game, One of the reasons for this is that variability in player defensiveness has been really high traditionally. This is why when you look at the new items in the game in Season 4, you don't see a damage reduction very much at all. It's a very premium stat now that's really hard to get, and it's to help solve this problem of when someone is stacking all damage reduction versus someone who has none of it, their difference in effective health and survivability is really, really high. And so it makes it hard to balance the game. Another part that we wanted to hit was really armor. That armor is kind of a really confusing stat. It's not really well understood how it works, and I'm going to be going over in a little bit how it works and what we're changing to kind of address both of these issues a little bit. Next is that some stats can get really high. We added all these crazy awesome stats, and you can juice them with masterworking and crit them and all these things. And it allowed for some really crazy things on the PTR, which people love to post constantly at me. And to be clear, we like crazy things. It's awesome to get powerful and have that fantasy. We do have to take into account things like combat clarity and computer performance to make sure that the game can still run very well for everybody. So we made some changes there to address that.
You mean it's not fun to just not see the screen or the ground?
I think it is for a little while. It is hilarious, I think.
Yeah, it's funny for a bit, but when you can only see patches of ground occasionally.
And when one player can do that, let alone when you get 4 of them in a group, it's great. And last but not least, balance changes and bug fixes. I'll be going over some of them, but there's way more than what I'm covering right now today. But just know, we took a lot of feedback on balance, a lot of feedback on bugs. There were a lot of them that were reported, and we acted on a lot of them, and I'll give an example of some that we did. All right, so let's go into armor. So, brief history lesson or description of how armor works today. This is when you log in, how armor is functioning. It's your stat for physical damage mitigation. So you know how you have your elemental resistance that caps at 75 and then can get pushed up a little bit? Armor reduces your physical resistance up to a cap of 85%. It can't go higher than that. That's the number. But what's confusing is the amount of armor that you need to get to that 85% cap is actually based on the level of the monster that you're fighting. And I gave some examples here. These are the actual numbers in the game. So if you have a level 50 monster that's hitting you, whacking you, then you need 5,265 armor, and then you'll be at that 85% cap. But then at level 100, at every level, 51, 52, 53, it's good, that number is going up of what you need. And at level 100, it's about 9,230, and then at level 150 monster, it gets close to 13,000, right? And so what this ends up, kind of creating is that the player really never knows when they're done with armor, right? That number can scale up forever. It's kind of a hidden system under the hood. So when you're fighting these monsters, and they get way higher level than you as you scale into the pit or nightmare dungeons or whatever, you don't really know how much you need. And so this is kind of really contributing to that phenomenon where you're fine, you're at the cap, and then the higher level monsters just start one-shotting you. So in Season 4, a lot of it's going to be the same as Season 3. It's still going to be your source of physical damage mitigation. The cap is still going to be 85%, and you're still going to need escalating amounts of armor as the monster level gets higher. But what we're changing here, if we go forward a little bit, is that armor is now going to cap at that level 100 monster number. So that 9,230, you can write down this number. We're also going to later get into the tooltip. We couldn't get it in for the launch of Season 4, but we'll have it soon after. But it's kind of going to be like elemental resistance, where you get to this number, and then you're kind of done with the system, right? So armor is just another thing on your checkbox of things you want to do as far as defensive survivability, and once you get it, you're done. You can get it from gear, legendary aspects, and so on. Particularly in Season 4, I think this will be a little bit of an easy number to hit. We're not trying to make this super difficult or hard to do. It'll be very achievable for you when you're a level 100 player. So here we have a zoom in on the tooltip so you can see this player has, way above that 9,000 amount of armor that they need. They have close to 16,000, but you can see there, that it's capped out at that 85% physical resistance. And again, soon after the launch of Season 4, we're going to actually put the cap that you need of the number that you're chasing, because we want you to know what the goal is that you're trying to hit.
So that means they have a lot of room for optimization, right?
Correct, yeah. This means that this player can actually give up armor on some of their, tempering or item affixes and look for other stats. That's kind of the point. So next, stat caps. So, now that we've introduced a lot of ways to get really high amounts of stats in the game, we want to kind of control for visual clarity, what a player can put onto their screen. So kind of similar to some caps we have already in the game, like attack speed or elemental resistance, we're putting some caps on cooldown reduction and the increased area size. You know, like, it's really fun to get those giant frost novas that cover the screen, but when it goes like 2 or 3 screens away, it can get really noisy and messy. So we still want these stats to be really powerful and impactful, but just control a little bit the amount of insanity that they can bring. And one thing on this cooldown reduction cap, to be clear, this is not just CDR across the entire game. This is just capping what you can get from gear. So this is like the base cooldown reduction you get when you first cast a skill, what it's going to be. You can still get cooldown resets or additional cooldown effects from things like the skill tree or legendary powers that just reduce the cooldown of your skills as you do certain mechanics. This is just like the baseline cap that comes from your gear.
I think when we looked at the cap for area effect too, we tested it on Frost Nova, and we were like pretty meticulous on what that cap should be, and it was still massive.
No, it's huge. Yeah. When I say like we're making a cap, you're still going to get to insanity when it comes to what's on your screen. It's still going to be awesome. So you can see here, this is just showing you what the tooltip looks like now. So we're going to be showing you, as a player, what those caps are, so you know, when you're evaluating your gear and on your tooltips, what it is. And then same thing here, you can see here, like the dust level area effect size bonus, it caps at 100%. Next, balance updates. So again, like I mentioned before, we made a lot of balance changes based on feedback. Again, thank you for playing and giving us all that feedback. I'm going to go over some of the things. One of the bigger categories of things was, again, like I mentioned, those changes due to combat readability and balancing player power. A few examples here of things that we're reducing are like the amount of dust levels that can be on your screen, and Fractured Winter Glass, one of my new favorite uniques we're bringing in. The amount of frozen orbs that could span the screen is going to be reduced a bit, so I want to prepare you all for that. Again, to be clear, you're still going to spawn a whole lot. It's just not going to be like insane amounts where you can't see things anymore. They're still going to be very powerful. I'm even going to show a video a little bit later of kind of the difference of PTR to what's going to ship in the game. Some other things, though, that we're doing, Fortify. We wanted to increase the amount of damage reduction that you get. This is just Fortify across the board, the base mechanic. That DR is going from 10 to 15%. And this was because before, when it was at 10%, we had to take into account that players could get damage reduction from a million different sources throughout the game. Now that it's more rare and more premium, we can actually make this mechanic in the game a little bit more impactful and feel like you're a tankier player for opting into this, these kinds of builds. We also made a lot of tempering affix updates. I'm not going to go into detail of them, but just know like what you saw in PTR and what's going to ship, you're going to see a lot of improvements, a lot of balance changes, even some shuffling around of the affixes to make them in ways that make more sense. Based on feedback. And then we did do some class changes as well. I'm only going to give very few examples here, but just know that there were quite a few. One is Druid players. Companion Druid players always harass me. They want that build to work, and I agree. It's really cool. So we increased the health of Druid wolves by 200%, and we also reduced the respawn rate and cut it in half. So, we got feedback basically that, their companions were really good and fun and did damage, but in the late game, they just kind of died and couldn't survive. So we're doing this to kind of address that feedback. All right, so here's dust devils as an example. So you can see on the left, this is just one barbarian by themselves, the amount of dust devils that they could produce, right? And then on the right, you can see kind of the same barbarian. You can see like the dust devils around the areas where the enemies are, they're still getting hit by a ton of them, but it's not covering the entire screen, right? And especially when you get like 3, 4, many players together, it really becomes insanity.
Yeah, especially when you're in a party of 4 barbs or, it's just like everyone's a barb and I don't know where I'm walking.
Yeah, and other classes can do that kind of thing too, not just barb, but this was kind of a good example. So, this is kind of seeing the difference between PTR and live. And then next we have another class change, so Scoundrel's Kiss. This is another one of our new uniques that rogue players gave us a lot of feedback on. So a quick summary of how this new unique works is it kind of changes your rapid fire skill from shooting straight and hitting a single enemy into kind of a mortar skill where you shoot up into the air and then your arrows fall on the ground and explode. It's really, really cool, but one of the pieces of feedback we got was that when you launched the arrows, they would kind of go in a line and they wouldn't all hit the same enemy anymore. So if you were trying to do single target damage, it could actually be a nerf unless you like walked right up to the enemies and shotgunned them. And while there was a way to play around it, players weren't really happy that like we transformed the skill so much that it went from a ranged skill to kind of a melee skill. So we made an update here, and we have a video of the before and after. But basically, you can see on the PTR on the left here how it goes in a big line, and then the player has to run right next to the target dummy to do the full damage to it. And on the right now, you'll see basically you target where those arrows are going to drop, and they just all go to that area. So you can hit a single enemy, but you'll also hit all the enemies around it because the arrows explode. So it should be a lot more usable compared to before.
Can Scoundrel's Kiss ricochet with my rapid fire?
I'm pretty sure, yes, it can. So it
God.
does all the things and inherits all the things that your rapid fire does.
That's
so
very cool.
It's gonna be
But
pretty
can
cool.
it double projectile?
I'm pretty sure it can, just like everything else. Yes.
Yes.
Spam everywhere.
Yes.
We love spam. And last but not least, bug fixes. Like I mentioned before, there were a whole lot of bug fixes reported to us. Thank you all for getting them. We addressed pretty much every single one that was reported. I'm giving some examples here, but again, we got a lot more than what I'm showing on the screen. One was Druid's Hurricane was incorrectly scaling damage basically infinitely, so we fixed that. Ebon Piercer, the extra missiles from our new unique, they incorrectly had 100% lucky hit chance, which is proccing a lot of crazy stuff. And then Flame Weaver, another one of the new things we introduced to the game. It's basically an effect where you can put a firewall on the ground and then you shoot firebolts through it and it'll split the firebolts. Really cool fantasy. But what happened in the PTR was you could stack a bunch of firewalls right on top of each other and they would split the firebolts multiplicatively and add more and more, way more than intended. So you could fire a ridiculous number of firebolts which were crashing servers and things. So it wasn't great. But now we fixed that so it'll work properly. And again, we're still discovering and working on other fixes. There were a lot more that went in. If you reported it, it was very likely fixed. So basically, the build will be in a much better, stable state once we launch. And that's really due to all your feedback, so thanks again. And yeah,
Awesome.
that's my section. So.
A lot of changes coming to classes. Class balance feedback we got from PTR was really, really great. You know, we were able to make so many different changes there. Of course, some of the biggest ones like the readability stuff that we probably saw. I've seen the initial videos of like the Dust Devils everywhere. Was crazy. Also being in a party with like I was playing PTR and being in a party with like two barbs and like another like necromancer. I was like, oh okay, like what's going on right now?
PTR is one of those things you get to see things in development state. I will say these kinds of things are actually pretty common when we're developing anything. Is being able to create these crazy situations, and we have to fix it for the game before it goes live. So, that's kind of the advantage of PTR is players can find these things.
Exactly.
There's a lot more manpower being put into it.
PTR was super great for us to have, and thanks again to the community for the feedback on all the class balance changes, and thanks Adam for walking us through that.
Yeah.
The next thing we do want to talk about is with Derek over here. Derek is actually going to talk a little bit about, of course, all the immense Helltide changes. Probably one of the most popular features and changes that we've introduced in Season 4 with PTR and people being able to experience it. Of course, we got feedback based off of players jumping into Helltide, and we do want to go through all that with Derek. And then we also want to talk a little bit about the season itself with Derek. So, Derek, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just a few things to cover. So as you mentioned, the players who joined us when the PTR or caught all the various like blog and video posts and whatnot know that with Season 4, we're introducing permanent upgrades to the Helltide experience. Heavy focus on improving and enhancing, I guess, monster density and activity variety. So there's a ton more things to do in the Helltides, and as a result, there's just a ton more monsters to mow through in the Helltides. There's also some explorations, and just to double back real quick, these are all permanent across both the seasonal and eternal realms, so they're not going away once Season 4 ends. This is just how Helltide
part of the
works.
game.
Yep.
Kind of like our item updates too, right?
Yeah, now and forever.
This is the new world we live in.
Yeah, this is Sanctuary. But there's also, if you kind of look at the top right of the screen, the threat system. So the longer you're fighting in the tides, you're going to be accumulating threat, which just results in even more monsters ambushing you at higher frequencies than monster packs. I think the personal favorite, and I think like fan favorite, is the Hellworm. This giant demon slug bug that just pops out from the ground and just vomits monsters all over you. But kind of with all those, the seasons, as we say a lot, are an amazing opportunity for experimentation. And sometimes the best results of those experimentations are when they can inspire permanent upgrades and just enhancements to the base game as a whole. So that's where the Hellborn and the new Accursed Ritual and Blood Maiden come into play as part of the new Helltide experience. Look at those. Those look rad. So the Hellborn, as our Season 2 players might recall, we introduced the Bloodseekers. And those were really cool monsters based on class archetypes. So you're kind of like fighting vampiric shadow versions of yourself. And we take a look at that content, and we just love it from like the team perspective, and just find like, hey, we're upgrading the Helltides. This is a perfect piece of content to just include with it. So that's where the Hellborn came into play. You know, they're fallen heroes of Sanctuary. They've been overtaken by the corruption from Hell and, you know, kind of turned against you. Kind of in line with that, the Accursed Ritual and the Blood Maiden. In Season 2, with the Bloodlures and the Bloodseekers, we introduced this concept of, I guess, calling it just like open world social boss summoning. We followed up with like the, there's a buzz right there.
Yeah, it's very catchy.
Rolls right off the tongue. I love it.
I get into my designer speak sometimes, but yeah. And we followed that up with like the Malthus spawners in Season 3. Yep. And again, looking at these really successful experimentations from previous seasons, we love opportunities to bring players together and just add that extra layer to the Helltide experience. So that's where the Accursed Ritual comes into play. So as you're out fighting against the tides, you'll be collecting the new material, the Baneful Hearts, that you can bring to the Accursed Ritual. It takes 3 to summon up the Blood Maiden. And you can do this, you know, by yourself, or you can partner up with some buddies and all, I guess, contribute to the summoning together. And, you know, the Blood Maiden itself is our new Helltide mini-boss, that she's immensely powerful, but also very, very lucrative. And I think the last thing forgot to mention is that this is all expanding into World Tiers 1 and 2 as well. And kind of like a distilled, not diluted. So the Helltide in World Tier 1 and 2 is more specifically tuned to, you know, I guess like meet the leveling needs, or the needs of the leveling player.
Yeah. Awesome. Oh, on the Blood Maiden, I remember you had talked about with me before that the people that summon the Blood Maiden actually get bonus loot drops, right? Yeah,
absolutely. So you can either contribute just by yourself to the Blood Maiden and get some extra loot for, you know, your troubles. We want to, you know, make sure that we give you a little bit extra because you're sacrificing up your hearts. But also, every player that it doesn't stack, so you're not, you know, stressed to say, hey, I just need to be the one that summons them all. We can all party up and just deposit our own Baneful Hearts and, I guess, reap the benefits of that.
Yeah. Right. To be clear, so if you put in all 3, you get bonus loot, right?
Correct.
But like you, me, and Colin are in a group, and like I put in 2 and you put in 1, do I get more loot than you?
No. So you get the same amount of loot. So, you know, if Colin has a Baneful Heart to deposit, and if we all, you know, dump them in together, then we all get the shared benefits of that.
Got it.
But I will touch on a bit later the PTR updates and just some of the enhanced value that the Blood Maiden received since PTR for both contributors and non-contributors to the summon.
Awesome. Yeah, so a lot of new stuff coming in for Helltide, and this is all part of the stuff that players got to experience in the PTR. And of course, we got learnings from the PTR, as you just mentioned.
Many.
Do you want to walk us through some of the changes that are coming in with Helltide for all the PTR feedback that we had?
Yeah, I think I have a PowerPoint of my own.
Ooh,
see, there you go. Look at that. Fancy. Yeah. So, you know, as mentioned, tons of sweeping changes going into the Helltides and just overall balance of the game in general with Season 4. And kind of with that, sometimes, you know, we push a little bit too far in some regards. So we did get feedback and also just own internal kind of field checks on the Cinder drop rates were feeling a bit slow in the PTR. So we just went back, reviewed it, and gathered our feedback and just iterated on the drop percentage to hit closer to the expectations of how much we want to be collecting the cinders and interacting with the tortured gifts. So I think we're in a much better spot. I know we're in a much better spot right now, actually. So that was one of the first major pieces coming out from the PTR.
A lot more chests from this, yeah?
Yeah, chests, more loot, more fun.
Awesome.
Let's see, next one. Yeah, so on the topic of more is more fun, the Baneful Hearts, we were noticing that they were dropping a bit inconsistently. So you can get the Baneful Hearts from opening tortured gifts, killing the Hellborn, and one of the Doomsayer variants, one of our new activity types. But again, we want to get the Baneful Hearts in the hands of the players with a pretty, steady cadence. So we noticed with the PTR that we're just not getting them as frequently as we wanted to. So we just went back, iterated, and kind of reviewed our bad luck protection to just ensure that we improve the consistency that Baneful Hearts are dropping. And this is all kind of like, the Blood Maiden is not meant to be seen as like this highly ambitious piece of content that you only engage with like once every 50 levels. We want you getting the hearts. We want you engaging with the social boss summoning mechanic. And I think it just adds that extra layer to the Helltides we want you to engage with. And on the topic of the Blood Maiden, overall, like we touched on earlier, the Blood Maiden is just seeing some overall rewards improvements. So as noticed, or as mentioned before, if you contribute to the summon of the Blood Maiden, you receive a bonus reward. But one of the things was that you couldn't really tell. There is a little icon that appears like where your buff bar, but the effects of that was largely unnoticed from both the team and actually just the PTR players themselves. So again, taking this opportunity to just review the overall value of the Blood Maiden for contributors and non-contributors alike. Because again, we wanted to make sure that she has a clear role in the Helltide experience. So again, overall, Blood Maiden is just overall more valuable. With this, we're dropping things like legendaries, Forgotten Soul, lore Zermats, and a % chance for contributors at the end world tiers to get some end game boss materials as well.
Yeah, so this is now like an additional opportunity for players to get additional of the boss mats for the boss ladders. Which we've heard a lot about how players were like, hey, we only really have one kind of method to get them, and we wanted to expand that and bring that into more avenues so players didn't have to just kind of be like tunneled off into one area to get like specific boss mats, which is cool.
Yeah, variety is the spice of life.
Yes.
I like that the contribution encourages you to actually use these. In Season 2, I'd just chain summon the boss over and over and over, and there would be this awkward dance where someone would show up, and it's like, I know you have
the waiting game. Like,
use your material.
Yeah, and that's why it's really also important that the nuance is honestly lost pretty frequently when we're talking about like drops for different kinds of creatures in different sorts of situations like this. Like Treasure Goblin, we talked about Treasure Goblin a while ago, a few seasons ago, and I rememut I put a poll out on X.com.
So
at one point, basically,
I
I put a poll out basically asking players what they believe the legendary drop rate of Treasure Goblins to be, and I had a whole bunch of options, and I think like 85% of the players were wrong. And because the drop rate at that time was 50%, players didn't feel it because they didn't see the Treasure Goblin enough to really notice that it was actually that high. So I think making sure that like we're like buffing up those moments where like if I have my contribution bonus a little bit higher, that helps make sure that is felt.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what's funny is Joe talking off screen and we're all looking off and people are just staring us stare into this random corner and stuff. You know what would be funny is if we all just actually looked back there at Bale. We should play
every time.
Yeah, every time. And then like Joe's turned into Bale. Oh,
literally coming out of the corner.
That's awkward.
That wasn't part of the plan.
I like the deep shadows.
That's where he is.
It's just lurking. Oh man.
I guess the moments when I decide to say something, maybe they'll occasionally.
I was like, we have another camera. Awesome. Cool. So a lot of Helltide changes that we have coming into.
Yeah, I think there's actually one more slide.
I'm pretty sure we have one more.
So one thing that we've kind of covered a lot across like just tempering and just the masterwork and just the spirit of Season 4 in general, just like removing friction points and just keeping players in the flow, the flow of fun.
People want to blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the Doomsayer variants, and again, like the Doomsayer's new activity type, it's kind of like a Kinder Egg surprise where you interact with them, they crackle and pop into something, a variety of things actually. So one of the variants that we had was the Chest of Doomsaying, where they would explode into a tortured gift that costs 50 cinders and gives you a whole lot of good stuff. We're kind of reviewing that, and sometimes what can happen is you can encounter one of these at the very start of your Helltide run, and you don't have 50 cinders. It's not a lot to get, but it still is kind of a stressful, potentially feels bad moment. So we just said, hey, let's just have it explode into the loot directly. You save 50 cinders, and you kind of just keep going on your merry way in the tides. So that's one of the kind of like efficiency smoothing outs that we've done. The next one is also just we're dumping a whole bunch of monsters on you, and it's always a feel bad moment when you get knocked out of an interaction. You're trying just to open up the tortured gift and head out. So we reduced the channel time to open tortured gifts from 3 seconds to 1.5 seconds, I believe, for Season 4 launch proper.
Nice.
That'll help a lot. So, and I think we'll address some feedback of like, why don't we just make it instant, right?
Right. Yeah, we kind of do want to safeguard against like the accidental clicks. Again, it's a frenetic game, so you're clicking a whole bunch, and I think 1.5 seconds is enough time to let you make sure that that's what you want to commit to before you open it.
And there's also like because you guys didn't talk about this, there's changes to like the channeling, like you I think with like dot damage and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, dot damage now won't interrupt channeling as well, which I think is a pretty good,
which is good. So especially as you are in the frantic areas of Helltide and everything. So lots of Helltide changes, a lot of good feedback from players from PTR. Derek, thanks for walking through on that, but you're not done yet.
But wait, there's more.
There's more. As you guys know, like there is, this is Season 4 Loot Reborn, and part of Helltide includes the Iron Wolves, and Some people have figured that out even before our blog on Tuesday. But we did want to talk a little bit about Season 4 and the Iron Wolves' participation in that, along with some cool things that are specific to seasonal characters for Season 4 as well.
Yeah. So again, as mentioned, the players who joined us in the PTR, or again, caught all the various blog posts, will notice that the Iron Wolves are now a permanent part of the Helltides. You know, they're fighting and dying alongside the players now, and they're here to stay. However, for our seasonal players, we have the Call of the Wolves seasonal activity, where players will get to spend a bit more time with the Iron Wolves and go on a bit of a journey with them to try and uncover the potential root cause behind these rising tides and uncover this mysterious phenomenon that's threatening to corrupt and consume the Iron Wolves from within. In addition to that, you know, again, the Iron Wolves are in the Helltides with you. As players are fighting and dying alongside the Iron Wolves in the Helltides, you're also going to be earning your way through the Wolves' Honor reputation system. And this is seeing you progress your way through a collection of just super juiced rewards that are specifically tuned to overpower your leveling journey from level 1 to 100 and beyond. The main pillar for this reputation track was really pushing the player's powers forward. The player power forward, there you go. The player's power forward and giving them early access to, you know, gear with juice stats, legendaries, materials, boss materials, and even a resplendent spark as like a cherry on top at the end.
We love the juice.
We do love that. But, you know, in the spirit of wait, there's more. You know, those are all like the gameplay related things. But we also have a couple of really cool cosmetics that you earn through the collective Call of the Wolf seasonal activity. So this is the Iron Wolf Mount Trophy, the little Iron Wolf banner. And, a little bit fast. But yeah, so the Iron Wolf Mount Trophy, we're doing it live here. That's earned from completing there it is. You can get both of them. That's earned through completing the reputation track, and the Blood Maiden head is earned by completing the associated Call of the Wolf quest line.
Awesome. Yeah, those look really great. And of course, as you mentioned, Resplendent Sparks. And then I know there's one other item that I know we wanted to talk about with this season specific, because it is specific for Season 4. And
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder on that. There's so much to cover.
I know. Derek has like the largest list of items to kind of go through here. So
So you know, as mentioned before, on the seasonal team, we love our experiments, and I don't think a season would be one without some level of experiment. So with that, we have the seasonal item, or as kind of like call it the seasonal toy, and that's the Profane Mind Cage. So there it is. So the Profane Mind Cage is pretty cool in the sense that it's a guaranteed drop from the Hellborn, and when you consume it, I kind of like to imagine you just like eating this demon brain.
Yum.
When you consume it, for the next 60 minutes, the Helltide monsters are going to be boosted up to 10 levels, depending on the world tier that you consumed it in, and you're also going to be increasing their Aberrant Cinder drop rates. So, you know, again, all tying this back to that leveling journey and like tempering and stuff, like, this is a really fun item that lets you kind of put your build to a little bit more of a test in exchange for maximizing your Helltide efficiencies through, you know, just one higher monster level means, you know, more XP and stuff like that, and also just Aberrant Cinder drops too.
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was just going to say, we juiced the World Tier 2, 3, and 4 XP. So it ties super well. You can just get to blast to endgame very quickly now.
Yep.
Yeah, and with the Mind Cage itself, like, you know, because everyone's probably going like, well, that's a consumable. Like, how do people end up like obtaining additional ones of those, or can you get more of those throughout the season and everything? Yeah,
we want to be very generous with those. So one, they're a guaranteed drop from the Hellborn in World Tiers 3 and 4, but you can also use them in World Tiers 1 and 2. So if you want to like boost some level, you know, alts and whatnot. You also get I think like a bucket of them through the Wolves' Honor reputation. Like, we crammed as many rewards as we could in there, so they will be in steady stream. So don't, again, in the spirit of like, use it, don't hoard it. Definitely experiment and have fun with this thing, because, you know, it's a game. Have fun.
Yeah, so it's great. Like, if you want a little bit more of a challenge, a little bit better rewards as well, you can of course use your Mind Cage, and that is exclusive for players in the season. So yeah, it's awesome to see. But yeah, thank you, Derek, for walking us through all the changes with Helltide, and of course some of the new season stuff with the Iron Wolves. And if you're a lore nerd, Iron Wolves, of course, are a very familiar faction within Diablo. They are from Diablo 2, Act 3. You could actually hire them as some of your mercenaries, or one of the mercenary options, though we know a lot of people went with an Act 2 mercenary in Diablo 2 for the aura. But yes, cool. Thank you so much, Derek. And of course, we still have more to talk about. We're actually going to go back to Colin. And Colin is going to talk us through a little bit about the pit. The pit is a brand new feature within Season 4 and is now a permanent feature within Diablo 4.
That's right.
Yeah, do you want to give us a breakdown for people who may have not experienced the pit or may have not seen the stream beforehand?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, tell us about all the improvements that we're doing to the pit based off of feedback.
Yeah, so, something that players have asked for since we did a bunch of nerfs to the Nightmare Dungeons, if you recall, I forget what season it was, but we made tier 100 Nightmare Dungeons a lot easier so players could get through them. One of the big pieces of feedback we got was, okay, well, where's my measuring stick? The game is a power fantasy. It's about getting as much raw power as possible and just dominating, right? So if there's no place to push back, then everything is just a little bit too easy. So the Pit of the Artificer is our answer to that measuring stick. You're going to be able to push very deep into the pit. There's a lot of levels. We were inspired by Abattoir of Zir, but to be very clear, Abattoir of Zir was a special case in that each tier jump was just brutal.
It was exponential.
Yeah, it was ridiculously hard every single tier, and it's you could only get to 7, which isn't very heroic or powerful, right? So we've taken a lot of the learnings from Abattoir of Zir. The pit goes very deep. There's many more tiers. It's much more gradual, so you can start pushing into it and getting some of these masterworking material rewards. And the pit is all about, just blasting through monsters and the demons of hell, right? There's no negative modifiers. We're not CCing you a bunch. This is really just a test of how powerful your build is. So from the PTR, we actually got feedback that it was way too easy because we added a ton of power through tempering, through the Codex of Power. It's just much easier to get a lot of those aspects online. So we've taken a look and we've moved some of the masterworking material tiers around. Previously, the tier 1 masterworking materials only came from 1 to 20. We've moved that up 10 tiers. So tier 1 will come from 1 to 29. Tier 2 will come from 30 to 59, and tier 3 will be 60 plus. And what that does, it just makes the journey feel a little bit more rewarding, right? We saw in the PTR that people just within the first 2 hours just blasted through all of it because they're so powerful. So we've just adjusted some of the rates there. So you have to push a little bit deeper. You have to optimize your build a little bit more. So those armor caps are things to watch out for, right? Where if you're over the armor cap, it's just a straight optimization to start thinking about how you want to replace some of that armor. We think that feels pretty good. And overall, we've increased the health and damage, increased the health on all monsters post level 100, both in the pit and Nightmare Dungeons. So the enemies should be pushing back on you a little bit more, right? You care a little bit more about utility, defense, outside of just one-shotting everything, right? So it sort of tests you a lot more. And part of that feedback, though, that we've heard is that, Nightmare Dungeons don't feel very rewarding. The pit doesn't feel super rewarding post, that 60 tier when you're getting those top-end masterworking materials. So we've done 2 major changes. One is we've added obols that scale with both of these tiers. So everything past tier 46 in Nightmare Dungeons and everything past tier 1 in the pit, actually. It just always gives you obols. You might ask, but obols are terrible. But again,
why do I want obols, Colin?
I know, right? A big part of season 4 was that we made the gambler guarantee 925 legendaries at level 100, and those legendaries can roll greater affixes. So if you blow a ton of obols on two-handers, for example, those two-handed legendaries you're getting are the same as anywhere else in the game. So it's actually a huge efficiency boost to getting the items you're looking for.
So to be clear, you can get some of the best items in the game from the obol vendor now.
Absolutely.
So that makes them a lot more valuable.
And one thing that is also changing with obols is because when people pick up obols, they're like, oh, I've got my cap, and now I'm like,
someone's
I'm
typing,
I run back to town.
But Colin, the obol cap is fucked. So we've increased the obol cap substantially. So the amount of obols you get now is 2,500. You can hold up to. So you can just go to the gambler and be like, give me everything, and you can just do that a couple of times.
Yeah. So get your obols and hit the tables. Pretty much.
Yeah, exactly. And the items are incredible.
And just to double down on this for a second too, one of the things that we also did as part of this, when you use the enchanting feature in Diablo 4, you can't actually enchant off of an affix into a greater affix.
That's right.
Yes.
So when a good item drops for you in the base game, you can't try to like roll for greater affixes off the enchanting system.
Yeah.
It's good for getting you to a stat you really need in a situation where an item didn't get you what you wanted.
Yeah.
But now with the Opals vendor, like those items, not only are they iPower 925 and they have the chance to be legendary, of course, like the Opals vendor always has, but you also have a chance to get greater affixes
That's right.
off those gambled items.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a particular pair of gloves, you're looking for a particular helmet, and you're saying, I really want a greater affix version of cooldown reduction on my helmet. Right, like now it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to take my 2,000 Opals. I'm going to go to the vendor. I'm just going to gamble, and try to get that one helmet.
Yeah.
Like now I have a chance to really do that, and this is a way for you to like getting more drops and such inside the pit is one thing, but giving you more choice when you get out of a pit run, I think
Yeah.
is very, very
Yeah.
valuable.
It's gonna feel way better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and another change we made was to Glyph XP. We got a bunch of feedback
Yes.
that's like, God, what the hell, Nightmare Dungeons. So we've increased the Glyph XP by 25%, which is faster leveling. And we've also scaled the amount of rune shards, which is the pit currency to get into the pit, with Nightmare Dungeon. So you can create sort of a positive feedback loop if you're really strong, you're really powerful, you're hitting those tier 100s. In the Nightmare Dungeons, you're getting tons of pit keys that you can then translate into the pit and just get lots of runs and lots of masterworking there.
Yeah, so a lot of feedback from Nightmare Dungeons. People were saying like, "Hey, are we planning on making any changes to that Glyph XP?" And
Yep.
so there are
sure
some.
did.
We sure did. We actioned on it for sure. So and then there's funny enough. There's also even in the season journey, I believe there's also like changes to the ashes themselves where you can actually use that to boost even like Glyph XP is also part of that. With the season journey. So very cool stuff that we have.
One more. Sorry.
There's more.
I have this list, but then I don't actually read it.
But then
it's just
he
like a
doesn't
prop.
actually
Yeah, sorry. The one other thing that we did was we heard a bunch of feedback that players were dying at the end of the pit because we have this like shadow boss that sometimes comes in and throws a wrench in what you're doing. And you know, as much as I push for learn to play, you know, our encounter
I
designers.
like that good philosophy person.
Ruthless.
Absolutely.
Take
it was
that,
hilarious.
hardcore players. Surprise.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah, isn't it fun to die after you killed the boss? Yeah, so our encounter designer did an amazing job cleaning up a lot of those affixes after you kill that boss, and the arena should be clear now after you kill that boss.
As chat says, get good.
That's
We saw that a lot, and you know, if you're a hardcore player, that would have been a tragic loss to your character.
I prefer the word hilarious.
Yeah, some designers like fist pumping, like yes, got him.
Yeah, just watching streams and reactions from that. So awesome. So a lot of changes coming for the pit. Pit is, of course, a new feature within Diablo IV permanently, and you can experience that in Eternal and Seasonal realms. And of course, we have some updates to the boss ladder because the boss ladder itself is changing pretty significantly. We talked a little bit about like how you can get additional materials in other places that Derek had mentioned, but Colin has additional like points that he wants to bring up about the boss ladder because we got a lot of feedback on that, and there's some new changes to it with Season 4.
Yeah, so we added Andariel, the best lesser evil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Boo, Asmodan.
I
Boo.
know. Yeah, always dunking me.
He just dunks me with orbs all day. Who likes that guy?
Yeah. So Andariel obviously has come back. She's incredibly fun to fight. The encounter design team killed it. And you know, on top of Andariel, we've added a new tier to the boss ladder called Tormented Bosses. So these are much higher level than level 200 bosses, sort of pinnacle aspirational bosses to take down. And what we've done here is we heard a bunch of feedback that it required 5 times the amount of boss materials, including some rare pit material, to summon these, and 5 times the reward. That didn't really feel like the right amount of reward efficiency for taking on something that was challenging, so we've nerfed the cost. It's now 3x the amount of boss material and 5x the reward, so you get some pretty big efficiency wins there, especially if you're crushing them in the end game. So that's feeling pretty good, we think. We also heard a lot of feedback that it's tedious to do the same activity over and over and over to summon some of these things, right? So it's like, I want to summon Penitent Knight, or I want to do the Beast of Ice. I know you and I have done that one like you know,
yeah, every
hundreds of
build I've
times.
chosen in a season
Yeah,
requires the Beast and Ice, and
It's like, I guess
I'm
I'm
just
doing
stuck in
another Nightmare Dungeon.
hell forever. It's
Yeah.
been great.
Yeah.
Very
So,
happy about that.
yeah. Well, we made it better. A lot of our random, you know, monsters and activities and things like that. So, you know, elites, whisper caches, treasure goblins, world bosses, you know, Hellborn, to name a few, are all going to start randomly dropping these boss materials. So, you know, you're not necessarily forced into doing one exact activity. It's still going to be the absolute best way to get some of this boss material. But as long as you're blasting, you're just going to be getting a lot of these materials ambiently, which you can trade. You can just sort of cash in on at your heart's desire. I mean, we think this makes the game feel more flexible and just sort of enables you to play a little bit more on how you want to play while still keeping the experience fresh. So we think that's going to be a pretty big win.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. To jump back into the Torment bosses, just because I'm going to jump around a little bit, we heard a bunch of feedback, especially from Widijo. Hopefully he's watching. Is
There's
the
no
bosses,
way Woody is watching right
I know,
now.
probably not. Yeah, it's not very interesting. We did some tuning to make sure that the tormented versions have some more parity, right? It was sort of like in a scenario where like one of the ladder bosses was just like dead easy, didn't really match the difficulty of the rest, and that's important because we give you one guaranteed resplendent spark one time for defeating any of these. So one step closer to getting that uber unique that's not just a raw drop of your choice, which is pretty awesome. And then something else, you know, speaking of resplendent sparks, we're adding one to Uber Lilith. So the first time you kill Uber Lilith, you're also going to get another resplendent spark.
So now that brings us to 3 opportunities of being able to earn yourself a resplendent spark. We heard one from Derek at the end of the season, the Iron Wolves, you know, board, and doing that within the season. We now have one with the Echo of Lilith, and of course one with your first tormented boss as well. So additional opportunities to earn resplendent sparks, and of course you can still salvage your any Uber gear that you do happen to find, and you can actually earn a resplendent spark.
Yeah. So what that means is if you do all of these and then you get an Uber unique, you can actually change that into whatever one you want.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is really what that means.
And then something else, you know, on the Uber uniques is that
I'm just laughing because I didn't realize this, but chat's calling out with our tooltip that we showed. We had 200 plus resplendent sparks.
Yeah,
that's what happens when you.
We're just really lucky and good.
Yeah.
That's how I get them.
Let me tell you guys
Is that how
about
you get them?
dev tools.
Yeah, that's actually my account online. So.
Oh yeah, there you go. Nice.
So on the Uber uniques, you know, we heard a bunch of feedback that it feels like a chore to have to do, you know, the Penance at Night into Varshan into Doom Duriel just for a chance at an Uber unique, right? And you know, we've experienced that ourselves, right? It's like, God, I got to do all this stuff to fight the boss that's going to actually drop something that I care about. You know, Greater Affixes help that because, you know, there's some variation to the uniques you're going to get. But for Uber uniques, we've actually added a small chance, a little bit lower than Duriel, to all of the ladder bosses, and they're going to have a chance to drop an Uber unique as well. So, you know, while you're grinding through this ladder, every single boss you kill is going to have a chance to drop an Uber unique. It's not exactly the same as Duriel and Duriel. We should do like a combo, like Duriel.
A lot of Uriels.
And we think that's going to make it feel a lot better.
Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, a lot of changes coming with boss ladder and changes based off of PTR feedback that we saw.
Yep.
Plus just overall changes for season 4 that we were planning, so that it's gives more opportunities for players to actually experience it. And of course, the new versions of the bosses themselves and the tormented Echo versions. So. Awesome. Thank you so much, Colin.
Of course.
And I know we wanted to, before we jump into Q&A, because we're getting towards the end of our updates for Season 4, Mr. Adam Jackson wants to talk a little bit about the season journey. This is actually something really cool.
One last thing. Us over on Class Designer, we're really passionate about this and we're excited for it. So the season journey. So we really want to kind of juice the rewards and make the season journey more exciting. And so what we went and did was, when you're going through the season journey for every class, you're actually going to be getting a preset, curated amount of legendaries as you're going through that are targeted toward a specific build. So we chose a build for every class in Season 4, and we're going to change it around in future seasons. Please give us feedback on this, but we think it'll be pretty cool. But you're basically going to get like close to a completed build when it comes to opening those caches. They're guaranteed targeted legendaries to build a specific fantasy for every class. I think we have a video to show what they're going to be for every class in Season 4.
Maybe
there. So Barbarian here, you can see We're going to be giving you a bunch of legendaries related to dust doubles. The druid, we're going to be giving you basically a pulverized build, which is pretty cool. Next is the necromancer. Of course, everybody's going to be playing minions, so we gave you a bunch of minion-focused legendaries. This should be pretty awesome. And then next is the sorceress. We actually have a cool new legendary coming into the game for incinerate, which you'll see here.
Yeah,
it splits
there it
up.
is.
So we were giving you an incinerate build on the sorceress. And then the rogue, we're giving you one targeted toward barrage. So again, kind of the point of this is that, you know, if you don't really know what you want to play, or you really want to just go through a season journey and try out something before you go to a build that you really want to do, you have a foundation of something more complete to start with, which we're pretty excited about. We think it'll be really cool.
And with the codex change now, you also get to like all those items are actually dropping out of the season journey caches. You get to kind of keep those. They're all going to your codex. You can use that build for the entirety of your leveling process.
Correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. So lots of changes coming this season. Sorry, my mic died halfway through there, so I had to do a quick mic swap as we were playing.
We were
footage.
free from
Also, Joe Pipor's back. Hi, Joe. Derek is now over here. So if people are confused of like what's going on, we are playing musical chairs today. That is also a new feature coming in season 4. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so a lot of changes. Season 4, pretty huge. It's by far the biggest season for Diablo 4 yet. And I know we wanted to jump into Q&A. I did want to bring up one thing as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which is, this is a change that will be represented in, by the way, patch notes are coming out immediately after this stream. So,
geez, okay.
So that's one thing. So yeah, people can check out patch notes immediately after this stream.
Please enjoy reading it as much as we enjoyed writing it.
Writing it and reviewing it and editing
editing
it. And I wouldn't, based off of the size of the patch notes, I wouldn't be surprised if we do have a few things that might be missing that we'll probably like have to post add if as we're kind of going through it, just because it's massive in terms of size, as people saw from PTR, and now it's just even
it
larger.
represents a few different teams like effort trying to deliver this too.
Yeah. So but patch notes will be up. One thing in the patch notes that I did want to bring up is, and this is a thing that's coming in season 4, is for players that want to change their hair on their characters themselves, they can actually go to the wardrobe now and actually be able to do it, which is a nice, like, good quality of life feature. We've heard a lot of people go like, hey, I kind of want to, I made that character a while ago, especially like an eternal character or something like that. I'd like to be able to change that around. Yeah, I now have that flexibility of being able to do so, which is actually really cool. So we're going to jump into Q&A as usual, as we always do. We will start off with a question. This is actually something that's been a popular topic that a lot of people have been talking about since PTR, and of course, even this week with the blog itself. But
don't leave me in suspense.
I know. I think we have the question. There it is. What does this mean for season powers in the future?
Oh, just what season 4 is, like the nature of season 4?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. So yeah, season 4 is Season 4, as I mentioned before, is like an opportunity for us to kind of like lift up a lot of aspects of the game that we think are really important. Diablo is a game about killing monsters and getting loot. And as I said before, getting loot, we need to make sure it feels at least as good as killing monsters, right? Like it's extremely important that this part feels good. And we took a lot of our development effort and put it against that goal as part of this release. And there were other parts of the game that we lifted up at the same time, like the various changes that we talked about for Helltide, for example. You know, the myriad new tempering recipes and things like that. There's lots of things we did, I think, as part of the release to just make the base experience of Diablo 4 more fun, right? So I'm really excited we're able to do that in Season 4. Thinking about what the future holds, we always want to make sure that with every season, you know, we are adapting to what we think the game needs at that time. We think it's going to make for a better experience overall. We love the idea of seasonal powers. We've learned a lot of really, really great stuff from the days of the Barber, all the way through the vampiric powers we got in Season 2, and all the Seneschal and Construct stuff we had in Season 3. We have lots of big ideas for the future, so but you know, you will see seasonal powers again in the future and different themes and mechanics as we go. That's kind of our promise to you. And with the things that we have in terms of like the Iron Wolves quest line and the various rewards you get, changes we made to the season journey for like getting like all of those themed items, those various like kind of aspect builds together as you kind of progress through. We want to keep building upon these mechanical elements as well at the same time to kind of continue to help lift up the experience. So yeah, we will be returning seasonal powers in the future. You know, but with every season, we want to make sure that we're doing what we think is going to be up, like lifting the game up the most, the things that we think are most important at that time.
Awesome. question from our, I'll bounce between some questions from chat and from our forums, because we did have a thread up in our forums about specific questions, but this one's from the forums. This is from Avalon. They're asking if, because Season 3 actually ran longer and Season 4 itself had a PTR, will Season 4 actually be a shortened season, or will it still be a standard size season? They weren't sure how PTR is actually affecting the time on it.
So PTR is not as impactful for the timing here. I think it's a slightly shorter season. I think it's like 1 week shorter or something. I need to look at the date.
Yeah, and I will note, like, PTR, the reason why Season 3 ran longer was because we wanted to make sure that we could get that PTR. This was our first PTR, so there was a little bit more effort needed to get that out for players.
Yeah, I guess you're absolutely right. So like, I think about, like, when I'm thinking about the future and like what PTRs look like, what we want things to be like. It's not that like having a PTR automatically means that everything is going to take longer to deliver. But there was a lot of things we had to set up at the first time for the PTR for Season 4, and I'm really glad that we did, because as I think you've seen, there's a lot of things we learned as going through the process.
And it gave us the time to iterate and use the feedback too, which we did a lot of things on based on. Question
from Blake Darko CS. Will you guys think about maybe a potential different beam color for items with greater affixes?
So I know we talked about this for a while.
Yeah, I think that's something we're definitely going to keep an eye on. Like right now, we think that the little dots, or I should say huge dots, the huge stars on them, are doing a pretty good job. But that's something that we also need to feel out and play, and we're super open to feedback and seeing how these new big stars are going to help.
Yeah. The change, especially the changes in the inventory, because now you can actually identify them in your inventory, and everything is really big.
And these also roll on unique, so there's a little bit of like work that we'll need to figure out. But again,
it's true. Yeah, you can get greater affix on unique items as well.
So it's like the beam color gets a little confusing there. So something that we'll monitor for sure, and of course something that we've seen from players and a lot of people bringing that specifically up. Fire Dragon Dad says that the Season 4 update's going to retro into existing Eternal. So everything we talked about today, with the exception of the Iron Wolves questline stuff, is actually present in the Eternal realm. So players, like the Codex power changes, everything like that will be there. I know there are a lot of questions related to like the Codex changes, especially for Eternal players. And just to clarify, if you have aspects in your inventory and your stash, it'll take whatever your highest roll of that specific aspect, and that will become your new best codex entry when Season 4 does start. You may need to log on to specific characters on Eternal to at least, like, for us to be able to check your inventory, but the stash, I know, will automatically move over there. Cool. And same thing for I know we get a lot of questions about like items on Eternal. Those will be marked as like legacy items specifically, because obviously we've changed a lot of affixes and everything.
And those items you can't craft on those items either at that point. Like you can't temper those items, and you can't masterwork those items. But they'll still retain like the item upgrade state that they had from the blacksmith before.
Exactly. So if it doesn't mean like when you log on all your gear is suddenly unusable. It's just marked as legacy, and you won't be able to use tempering or masterwork.
It's a great stepping off point to getting some new items that could have greater affixes and other things that could make it even more powerful.
Yeah.
A question that we have actually from the forums. This is from Iggy. With the itemization reworks, is there what is like the next like big thing you guys are actually looking at potentially wanting to really work on within the team? I don't know if we want to play our cards too early.
Well, I think
we're working on things.
We're working on all kinds of stuff, everybody. But no, I think one thing we want to continue to work on, I think you see, like, as we're thinking more about the end game experience, a lot like when we launched Diablo IV, we thought of end game really as a journey from 50 to 100, like the things you're doing along the way, and getting all of your Paragon glyphs and leveling those glyphs up, and diving deeper into Nightmare Dungeons, and going and eventually confronting Lilith. That was what we kind of imagined, or thought that endgame would feel like, and that was a good thing for us to build on. I think we saw that a lot more players were looking for endgame like explicitly at level 100. Yeah. That was when they wanted a lot more things to open up, and we've made a lot of changes recently to try to like create more gameplay around that part of the experience, between like the itemization changes and the crafting changes, and also in the introduction of like tormented bosses, and of course the Pay the Artificer.
Yeah.
So I think that like we know that there's more opportunities for us to build on these things, right? Like I think you've heard me say this before, but a lot of the things we're doing in Season 4 specifically really are done to like build a new framework, for how endgame sort of functions. The things that drive a player forward, the things that get them excited, and the content that they engage with along the way as well, right? We want to make sure that that players are having a really fun time, a rewarding time while they're playing Diablo 4, and they can find opportunities to be appropriately challenged as they go through the experience as well. We think there's more opportunities for us to kind of like grow and expand the offerings of things that players can have access to, the things they can go experience, at that stage of the game.
Awesome. Question from Old Dudes, New Games. I love these names. They're so good. What about codex resetting when swapping characters? That was actually just an issue on PTR. Like when you swapped characters and stuff like that. Sorry.
Yeah, when you
Lost
swap,
the
then
mic.
you use the when you use the boost NPC. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was not a thing that you will experience with season 4, and so that's not a common thing or a normal thing that's supposed to actually happen. It just was a bug that we had in PTR. There's a lot of questions here about the mind cage, and I just want to maybe clarify with the players. Opus Crocus says, if you consume more than one, does the mind cage stack or does the timer reset?
Timer reset, I think.
Yeah, the timer resets.
Timer resets, okay. And then in regards to, again, this is from Optics, do mind cages trigger for a single player or your whole group if you're grouped up?
Single player.
Just a single player. Yeah, it's a personal thing. Okay. All right. So clarity around the mind cages, because I know we've had a lot of people ask specifically.
And we want
about
feedback
that.
on this, by the way, too. So when you get a chance to play with the mind cage during the season, like, tell us what you think. We want to know.
This is from Nupu Games. Do unique items get a stat/functionality boost since tempered legendaries are just straight up better? And is it generally not worth it to equip a unique item after the patch?
Yeah, I mean, I think Adam can speak to some of these changes if you wanted to jump in, but we've done a pass on all the unique items. We've done things like Razor Blade, I think has 4 Thorns affixes, and we changed what the legendary power is.
Yeah. By the way, that was a big question we got from people at the PTR, because they were like, hey, what about Razor Blade?
We heard a lot. No, we had to change Razor Blade.
Yeah,
it'll be cool.
And it's actually in the patch notes, and it's a lot of Thorns.
Razor Blade's hilarious. We still love it.
It's hilarious.
I wanted to just have like 1 so you can't miss on Masterworking.
Yeah.
But that
yeah,
might
what
be
I'll
too
say
crazy.
though about the unique to legendary item power level, I suppose, is that we knew when we were making these tempering changes and updating those that we wanted legendaries, because they kind of have they have kind of different identities right now in the game, and so we're still figuring out what we want to do with uniques long term. But the idea is that like legendary items, or items really, they have a journey, and you're working on them, and there's a story to them, and you get it, and it's not like a one-stop shop, you're done, kind of like how they were before. Uniques, a part of their identity is that you get a unique and it's freaking awesome and really powerful and very exciting, and you have it and you're done with it. Mm-hmm. And so we're keeping this discrepancy of like what their purposes are in the game for now, and kind of seeing how it goes. We did take a look at some uniques, but we didn't like do a whole pass of like, every single unique now has 5 affixes or something like that. Like, we wanted them to be a little bit different, have different identities. So we do kind of expect that uniques may be less prevalent than they were before. We still believe, though, that a lot of uniques are really key for various builds, and so you're still going to want them. But you're not going to want, like, a unique in every single slot in your character now, because they're just clearly always better, right? Sometimes some builds will want more uniques, some will want less, and we want to kind of see how that plays first before making sweeping changes. Some obvious roads we could take is like adding crafting to uniques. What if you could temper them? What if you could do these other things, right? Like, we know that that's a thing, and we may do that in the future, but we're kind of evaluating this world where it's not clearly always you only get one or the other, and we kind of want to see how that goes first before making any big changes.
Yeah, and the fixed nature sort of has you consider it's part of your optimization puzzle, right?
Yes.
Like, well, I'm going to give up some tempering affixes to get this unique, for example, in my chest slot, for example. And we sort of want to see where that goes. Like, we think that that's fun, and we think that the excitement of a unique are those fixed stats. When you see the item on the ground, like, oh, okay, that's the unique I want. I can just equip it. I don't even have to work on it.
Yeah.
It's just like there for me. So,
awesome. And then I know, by the way, did we talk about masterworking? Or not masterworking, but...
We did talk about masterworking.
A lot.
we did talk.
I know.
We've done it twice on stream.
Did we talk about groups and with the pit?
I didn't write it down, and I didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of feedback that it sucks to help someone with their pit run and just not get any masterworking material. It's like, well, why am I here? So what we've done is we've made it so that the person who opens the pit is going to get 100% of the masterworking materials. Previously, I think it was split, maybe across all players. And what we've done now is that the person who opens it gets 100%, and then everyone who helps defeat the pit gets 50% of that target goal. So we're trying to walk that line where group play isn't just like totally overwhelmingly efficient, but you're still getting something for helping each other go through those pit levels.
Yeah, we heard a lot of feedback about players going like, it feels a little unrewarding to and so
totally
there were some
that.
changes.
In general, I think there's still some tension with how players feel about the efficiency of groups versus the efficiency of solo play with like boss summons and things like that. These are things we're thinking about. We have ideas on, but we want to continue to get feedback, particularly with these changes, and kind of see how things play out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. We're getting questions about, hey, are there any updates on social features and things like that coming to D4? Don't know if we have anything to share right now. It's something obviously the team is very well. You guys ask all the time, so we're very, very aware of it. And the team is been looking at it, and once we have more to share, we'll end up sharing it with you guys. But for right now, we don't have any update.
Yeah.
There's questions about it. If there's plans of adding maybe potential leaderboards to the pit or anything, or is that going to be something that's just exclusively on the Gauntlet?
I think the idea of adding leaderboards to other types of content over time makes sense. Could be pretty fun, But right now, I really want to see how the pit plays on its own. The trials feature and challenge ladder, like we really want that to be a place where players can, or the Gauntlet rather, it's a place where we really want players to be able to like go and compete in a very fixed environment, a very extremely fair environment, which is like what we really prioritize as part of the release. The pit is pretty variable run to run, so that makes it a little more complicated. It doesn't mean that we would never add it. I think that there's a clear indicator that it'd be pretty fun to have this slightly looser leaderboard associated with a feature like this.
Yeah.
But we're going to see how things play out, and we'll be thinking about how we can add more competitive features like that to the game over time.
Question from Elro here. I didn't pronounce that right, but
Elro here. I think that is actually
nailed it.
It's like an elven name right now.
Since not everyone actually experienced PTR, because PTR itself was on PC BattleNet, but they were asking when tempering, can you keep previous roles?
Can you keep previous roles?
Like the enchanting system.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Currently, right now, we don't have the functionality to let you keep the roll. Right now, if you're going to commit to re-rolling, you're going to lose that
You're
previous
committing
one.
to re-rolling.
Yeah, it's sort of like the blacksmith is hammering on that item and unlocking different aspects of the weapon. You sort of lose what you previously had. But we're open to feedback, right? It's a completely new feature. Really want to hear how it's playing, and then ultimately what we want is a fun crafting feature. So if that sort of feedback is really valuable.
We'll take two more, and one is from Matt LOL. Is tempering going to allow changes for the skills, the skill type, like maybe lightning hydras, or maybe changes to Blizzard where it's a rain of fire or something like that?
That's pretty cool.
Honestly, anything an Apex can do.
Yeah.
It is open season of things we could potentially do in the future. Yeah, not in season 4, but possibly in the future.
Awesome. This is actually from
There's a lot of space to grow.
There is.
Utility is a category that we can do. There's a lot of space to do
utility.
interesting things potentially. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions in here about like additional character customization options and stuff like that coming in the future. It is like something the team is always looking at, adding additional things for players to have more choice of what they want to do, especially as they're creating characters, and of course being able to obtain those, like even just some things in season 4 of being able to get additional, cosmetic things for your mount and everything like that is something that the team is most definitely looking at.
Yeah, we care about this a great deal. I think one thing that's very interesting about Diablo 4, or a problem that we have that's very specific, right, is there are actually quite a few cosmetics for players to earn out on bosses and things, like throughout the game. Like there's lots of things for players to collect cosmetically in the game. But it's really hard to know that drops off that thing in Diablo 4. Like you can go and you could fight like a world boss 50 times and not have a drop occur for you, right? Like then eventually you get your special horse. You're like, oh, okay, it is here, but you have no idea. So it's kind of like it's harder to know exactly where to grind. We're actually talking about that a bit on the dev side. See if like there's more ways we can kind of like make it clear where certain things can be found, which I think could be really fun.
Yeah.
But I think that there's work we can do there, and also there's still work we can do about just trying to get more cool looks into the game. So we've been talking a lot more with the various teams inside Diablo 4, and there's a broad agreement we want to bring more cool stuff to you guys, and more cool stuff for players to find and pick up and equip and feel like it was really exciting to get that thing. One thing we're doing like already is we're like as we develop more uniques, we're trying to make sure that we have like more unique appearances to go with all of them. We usually have like a lot of really really fun ideas. We have to constantly like wrestle with like, all right, we only have like this X many swords, but like we have like this many ideas for swords, and we want to like try to get this in the game. We want to wait till we have the artwork for a sword. We usually try to make sure that we've got a fun toy to immediately give you. But we're going to make sure we're trying to get more of that stuff in game as well. So there's just even more artwork to the unique system for players to collect.
Awesome. So that's all the time we got right here for today. We went over all the changes, or not, actually there's even more changes. There's actually more changes in the patch notes. We can't go through every single line in the patch notes over a stream, so you guys can actually check out the patch notes. Those will be available on Diablo4.com. We always have those listed on our specific patch notes page, and those will be live immediately after this stream. Season 4, Loot Reborn, starts on May 14th. This is across all platforms. It's on PC, Xbox, PlayStation, and of course, if you're an Xbox and PC Game Pass user, you can also play Diablo 4 now via PC Battle.net or on your Xbox. So lots of opportunities to play, and of course, Steam. Can't forget Steam. Steam is also on there for PC.
That's also a platform.
That is also a platform. We're everywhere.
Any other platforms you want to shout out? Or?
We're everywhere.
Oh, all right, we're everywhere.
Just everywhere. But again, thanks to everyone for tuning in. We're looking forward to you guys jumping into Season 4 Loot Reborn. Yeah, we'll see you guys in game. And thanks again.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.